My name's Natt. We're at Langhorne Creek. We've got a 200 hectare farm. We run beef cattle, breeders mostly. Our rainfall's 388 millimetres. We've got a reasonable amount of flooded country which gets an occasional flood over it, which helps grass and plant growth. And we also have some irrigation which supplements our rainfall. Again, helps our pastures along. When we decided to move into regen farming, we've just been having thoughts. We're going to be spending a lot of money sowing annual crops, and the profit wasn't that great. Also had issues with weeds that we're battling to control. Also had hard pan issues because we were cropping. The nature of the farm, because of the floodplains we had, just thought we're not using our depth of soil. Annual crops are only fairly shallow rooted, so there's going to be a lot of potential to use more of the soil. I thought perennial plants was probably something we should look at. There just seemed to be more promise in them. One of the first things we did as far as changing to a more holistic regenerative farm was fencing into smaller paddocks. I think we had 10 or 12 major paddocks, and now we've got 32, so split into smaller paddocks. And we also did strip grazing within those paddocks and set up water troughs and things so that we could move once a day or even more often if we wanted to, and be able to manage the stock. So getting that managed grazing going was the most important thing we did. I think the greatest challenge in moving into regen ag, especially when you've been a traditional farmer for a long time, is getting your head around completely different concepts which are almost the opposite of what we've been taught as traditional farmers. So being willing to let go of them, but also learning, not just accepting it, but working through why you think the regen principles actually have something to offer. I think that is one of the hardest points, that you can't really go and talk to your neighbours because everyone else is traditional and, as I say, seeing things in a different light and looking at it differently, so it's hard to discuss things. So probably one of the hardest things, especially in the early days, was there's just no one else much to talk to. That's changed a lot over the sort of 10 years or so that I've been doing it. And now there is a lot more, and I think people are realising the importance of that. So there's more networks being developed, which I think is crucial to helping people be successful. Things I've noticed as success-wise have been, I think costs are way less. Income's probably a bit less too, but the profit's what's important. And so the profit's equal, if not better, than what we were doing before. And I think farming's just much more enjoyable. You're just more in tune with sort of nature and what's happening on the farm, become more aware of what's happening in the paddocks and with the animals. There's more of a collaborative feel between you and your farm rather than fighting it and trying to get it to do something that you want it to do. But lower stress and just enjoying the farming more is so important as mental health, and that's really an issue these days, and people under a lot of stress and that. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things. One of the other changes has been a change in soil. We had quite issues with hard pan, and just notice now that the roots are getting down. The soil's becoming more friable and you can just see more activity, roots and things in the soil, so that's definitely improving. Also getting more native grasses and plants coming back. I think animal health's improved. We had a few little, not major issues, but little niggling issues that we don't really seem to see now, a bit of grass tetany and things like that. That seems to have disappeared, so I think the animal health is a lot better because the animals are getting a variety of different plants that they can pick from. We change our grazing regimes in the paddock, so it's not just a fixed rotational graze, but some paddocks we graze quite often to try and drive the plants to putting sugars, which leads to carbon in the ground and getting the plant tougher and established. And then we move through to a moderate amount of grazing or timing of grazing, and then we move right through to some paddocks will be shut up for a whole year, and Sabbath paddock to let things seed up, give the plants a bit of a rest and just bring change in the paddock, so which we think helps that diversity and helps build resilience in the plants and helps build diversity. So that is a bit better example of one of our browse patches hasn't been grazed, and so yeah, a lot more to look at. There's old man saltbush, and there's some rhagodia type plant, ruby red saltbush, which is a little native, and that's probably a typical good plant to talk about, and if it's managed properly it's fantastic. And also also a bit of grazing. The plant looks magnificent after it regrows, but it's a plant that if you leave stock on it, they just kill the whole thing out. So I think it's a good example where we've gone from killing things by grazing and then wanting to shut everything up and do nothing with it, and yet if we took that middle ground, a plant like that has got huge value. We just need to manage it properly and you actually help the plant. Some acacias. Years ago we planted shelter belt, gum trees and she oaks, and over the years there's been quite a bit of, again, the ruby red saltbush come up in there and a few other little things. And we've sort of decided, well, perhaps we shouldn't just keep these things shut up forever, but maybe we could graze them in a way that we would get a bit of benefit out of the money we've spent planting them, and the stock would get a bit of a benefit and the plants would actually be enhanced. As far as changes that we've noticed from an ecological perspective, I reckon there's been huge changes. The amount of different plants that are just coming back that I've never really seen. Didn't know they were here, like some of the native grasses, wallaby grass and the windmill grass. That's coming back, and just a different range of plants that we've planted some and just seeing them work together, and the hard panning and those things are disappearing. We're just seeing plant roots go down more depth. When we started, we're probably lucky to get 2 inches of root, and now we're probably towards 4 in a lot of places. Our soil, especially these floodplain soils, have just got such a depth of good soil, and we just don't really use it under an annual system, so almost increasing the farm size by going down instead of buying the neighbour sort of thing. So things like the dung beetles, which never really noticed, they just go crazy now, which is happening now. We've just had sort of our first rain for the year and it's really fired them up. So some of the cowpats are just disappearing overnight nearly in odd places, not everywhere of course. But, so that's exciting to see those things, and we'll seeing more earthworms, and the soil just has a better look to it. I think before it looked geologically good, but it was sort of boring if it had nothing much in it, but now you can see roots and see the structure of the soil changing, which is pretty exciting. I think just enjoying sort of what's happening and not feeling that I have to go and do something to make it happen. It can actually do it itself. We're sort of along for the ride. To me, one of the important things is, and I think something we need to get over to the community in general, is stock is seen as degrading the environment, but I think regen farming done properly, they're actually an asset and they can actually help repair so much of the damage that's been done to our soils over the last few hundred years sort of thing. It's sort of exciting to think that those animals are actually improving the paddock and not damaging it if we manage them properly. Here's one of my favourite little critters, is a dung beetle. So this is a winter dung beetle, they're just getting going, and you see the little mounds and that around the cow pat where they've been busy. So this fella seems to have not found himself a pat yet.